Indiana 97, Sam Houston State 71. Didn't really do any of these from the Bahamas, so we thought we'd do one tonight. We will keep it kind of short. I mean, I guess to some extent you're allowed to call this a rebound game. This was a Ken Palm top 150 team. I mean, Indiana's Ken Palm rating shot up, I think, 17 places after winning this game. You're encouraged if you're Indiana by the start, but the first 15 minutes were really, really good defensively. Indiana was up 36-14 or 34-12 at the 5:05 mark. That was the peak of Indiana's first half lead, like in terms of Indiana's best lead in the first half. Then we saw another one of those defensive lulls. I think it was basically first 15 minutes, 12 points allowed. Next, either 12 or 14. Next 15 minutes, 38 points allowed. So you still are seeing these defensive sort of fluctuations. And Mike Woodson even talked about 46 second half points allowed is not good enough. But if you're Indiana, I mean, listen, the climb out of the hole that you dug for yourself in Atlantis is just kind of one rung at a time, and this had to be the first one.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to get sort of excited about sort of feasting on these teams where it just feels like it's all empty calories. Like the moment that they get punched in the mouth again or tested, they fold. And so I think we need to see some sort of sustained effort. I mean, I thought Luke Goody was very clear. I was kind of impressed. I don't think we had talked to him. I hadn't.
Not in the regular season. No.
And I think you talked to him, I think, at the media days. But
I did.
He's very clear about this team lacked toughness in the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not just the Bahamas. I think they lacked it a couple other games before that. And so can they give this kind of effort on a nightly basis? And until they sort of prove themselves, I think everybody's going to sort of take even the greatest of success against the lesser than teams with a grain of salt. And I think it's absolutely fair.
I mean, yeah, like a win like this does do something for your analytics. It's worth saying, like,
at this point,
but listen, what I'm trying to say is from a perception standpoint, winning all these games isn't going to get you much when you've already kind of, smeared red paint on the wall for what you did in Atlantis. We always knew
red paint on the wall.
I don't know, just noticeable paint. I was thinking about my kids painting the walls.
I mean,
something you're not supposed to.
I think you're looking for something else, and like
no
poop.
No. Okay, thank you. Mind your banners after dark. But like,
isn't that the phrase? You smear shit on the wall? Please. There's no broadcast regulations. I don't think. I think we're okay. I think the FCC is going to come down on us hard.
I think you need to rein it in. I think you need to rein
That's
it in.
the phrase. Smear red paint on the walls is nothing I've ever heard before.
Well, you have now, and it's a lot better for this podcast than what you just said. Anyway, the point is, you're not going to get, from a perception standpoint, that much credit for winning these games. It will help your computer numbers, which, like, just in the most functional sense, Indiana needs to worry about. We saw what happened when they didn't worry enough about it last year.
Well, especially because of the losses.
But like, it only gets you so much. And that's why I come back to the idea that, like, listen, all Indiana can do is just kind of tackle every problem in front of it. Now, next week, Big Ten play starts, Minnesota here, Nebraska there. So you at least want to get into a better frame of mind, to your point, from what Luke Goody was talking about, being tougher, making some of the adjustments, learning, not just learning, but like putting into practice some of the lessons learned from Atlantis. Again, better defensively tonight. Sam Houston State's not a great rebounding team, but listen, we've seen bad rebounding teams rebound the ball well against this team before. It was by design that Indiana had its bench short tonight. Gabe Cupps and Kanan Carlisle were both out, but I mean, it's worth saying, if you look at that bench, well, I was looking for the plus-minus numbers because the three highest plus-minus numbers tonight are all bench. Bryson Tucker, 23, Luke Goody, 31, Anthony Leal, 39. Like that bench, we can talk about Goody hit 5 threes, kind of found a shot again. He looked like he was finding it in the Bahamas, and he really kind of exploded tonight. Tucker had a good night with 8 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. Anthony Leal only scored 4 points, but 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And, the plus-minus can be a little deceiving sometimes. It doesn't feel like it's deceiving on a night when your bench guys have the 3 most pronounced positive impacts on the plus-minus.
Was that only the second game he's played meaningful minutes? He played maybe one.
Leal
in Bahamas.
Yeah, he had one game where he played. I think
that was
the Gonzaga game. I think is the fouls.
Yeah, so that was a surprising sort of. I mean, obviously they were shorthanded, but him getting sort of, he was like first player off the bench. I was watching the college football playoff show there for a little while, but you got meaningful minutes, 25 in the game. Obviously, I mean, I think that's probably more combined than he played all season.
Yeah, I think he only played like 5.
Bryson Tucker got back on track. I mean, the whole bench looked good. What was it? 36 points. That was by far a season high.
Yeah.
Fourth time they're 4-0 when a bench player scores double digits. And you saw that tonight from Luke Goody. But again, Miles Rice had a nice game. Sort of a bounce back effort. It seemed like Woodson kept him in there for sort of late into the sort of because they were up by 30 and he was still on the floor. Just try to just get him more positive sort of vibes or just feeling better about things.
Whatever was going on, he really struggled. I think
that,
Indiana. I think Indiana was making a clear effort to get Miles Rice feeling good again tonight.
Yeah, and so, but like I said, I mean, it's just I think you sort of say, they did good tonight. Will this carry over to the next game? Which is in a couple of days, or even next week? Just because this team's been so up and down. And even saw it. I mean, you tweeted out about the defense, just so up and down in the game, where it's like fundamentally they just forget what they're doing for stretches.
Well, and I think what I will say feels a little different about this team is, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this without being too simplistic. Like this team can score when it what really kind of like fundamentally undid Indiana Atlantis, Luke Goody's right, was toughness. What in the moment kind of undid Indiana was that Indiana just sort of lost all touch with itself offensively. We know this team has problems defensively, and it's it may well get better. That does not mean they're ever going to be a patently good defensive team. But unlike last year, and to some extent even 2 years ago, where they were a better defensive team than they are right now, but like the offense was much more sort of narrowly defined in terms of how they could find their offense, where they could find their offense. Tonight's a reminder that when this team plays well, and South Carolina was this way a little bit too, Providence was this way a little bit, when this team plays well, even if it's struggling defensively, it can just kind of outrun some teams. And that's a bit of a difference because we have not seen Indiana capable of doing that at volume, really, under Mike Woodson. He's had some efficient offenses, but not ones that could just kind of – I mean, they put up 97 tonight, and it really never felt like they got out of like second or third
and actually
gear.
They had bad performances. I mean –
not bad, but like, it wasn't like everybody was –
Ballo was off.
Galloway had 4 – yeah.
And Baco was
fine.
He scored 13 points.
He wasn't great.
Trey Galloway looked like the minutes caught up with him and
4 turnovers. Yeah.
And so you haven't seen a game. Maybe the South Carolina game was the best game they played offensively. Is like everybody firing sort of.
Providence was up there pretty. And Providence obviously.
But I mean, Providence was a game, against a team that had just stopped playing the night before half hour.
But still, either way, the point is that's probably the best they've looked.
Yeah, and so you're still waiting for this team to look from top to bottom. On points, Ballo, like I said, and Mbako, I think are 2 players that just swing wildly. Renew has been like that too at times. And then Rice has had moments too. So I just think that starting lineup has been strangely sort of up and down for the talent it has. And you want to see it sort of settle in here because we're already a month into the season. Like at what point do you sort of say like, this team's got to, because we keep saying they're going to find themselves, they're going to figure it out. When you're running out of that runway, right?
I mean, to some extent, I think it's early mid-January that you want to start seeing them really stack it together. Like, I mean, listen, you would have liked to have seen it more in Atlantis, but like that shit.
But with the lows that they've had, don't you think that the concern accelerates? Like, right? Like,
well, if we're talking about from an NCAA tournament standpoint, it is worth saying, as frustrating as those losses were, neither of those losses is particularly damaging. Now, the margin of defeat is a problem, but like as things stack up right now, and we don't know what those teams will do over the course of the season. As things stack up right now, those are perfectly acceptable neutral site losses. It's more kind of the idea that you don't have a lot going for you. If we're talking tournament resume, your best win is either probably going to be Providence on a neutral floor or maybe South Carolina here. Neither of those is likely to be that valuable on Selection Sunday. So you don't just have to start pulling it together in Big Ten play to be a Big Ten contender or whatever, but also because you're going to need to kind of hit the ground running. And by the way, if you look at the schedule as it shapes up right now, the second half of the Big Ten schedule looks more difficult than the first half, just in terms of who they have to play and to some extent where they have to play them. We've talked about that kind of brutal stretch of 7 road games and 11 right there in the middle of January and February. So the point is, I think it's probably like early mid-January you want to see this team look like it is really at least starting to kind of accelerate with what it's doing at both ends of the floor. And I'm not promising that tonight is some harbinger of better things to come. It did just feel a little bit more like Indiana, as Luke Goody kind of referenced, taking the sort of bitter medicine of the Bahamas and just kind of pushing itself forward and not sort of sitting there and wallowing in its own frustration over what happened last week. And that's, that's we'll see what that's worth long term. It may not be much, but tonight that's all Indiana can worry about.
And we've seen some couple comments about just what should you celebrate about this? Like there shouldn't be much to celebrate here.
No,
and I think they're at the point where that's fair, right? Like 4 seasons into Woodson's tenure, you've got the most talented roster he's had, and you shouldn't be like, well, we're really excited we didn't fall on our face again. Like like that's a pretty low bar to clear, especially against a team that's lesser than, and you don't really play anybody good, on your non-conference schedule, certainly, the rest of the season. So, I mean, I just think you're setting the bar pretty low for success. I mean, they did clear it tonight, but I mean, I think you're expecting more at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is Indiana can't give you more tonight. All Indiana can do is try to get better in the confines of this game. I thought they did to at least some extent. I think we're going to learn a substantial amount about this team and its ability to pick itself back up next week with those 2 Big Ten games.
Yeah. We had a couple of questions about the football.
Yeah, we're going to do a longer podcast either tomorrow or Thursday because we're going to talk to Kurt Cignetti tomorrow since it's signing day. I'm sure we'll talk about things other than just recruiting. But quickly, you watch the show. Indiana 9th. I think Ward Manuel made it pretty clear teams that aren't playing this week basically aren't going to move. So Indiana can move up based on maybe other teams losing, but Indiana cannot move up. And basically what I'm trying to say is Indiana's locked in.
The biggest news, so the matchup that was based on these rankings was Georgia. 10-7 would be the matchup that they're projected to as of now. But I think you're right. The biggest thing was Ward, and he took some pushback from this from reporters on the conference call.
Which reporters?
But the idea that they've sort of settled on the teams that are in the tournament, barring a bid stealer, and that the teams that – so an example that he gave was Tennessee and Indiana. Tennessee's resume is impacted because Georgia plays, and they lost to Georgia, and Georgia could technically be a 3-loss team next week. But that's not going to really impact. That's not going to change the way they think about Tennessee to move them below Indiana. So Indiana is always going to be behind Tennessee. They could shift maybe 1 or 2 spots based on how Georgia moves, or what they do with those teams, or how they view a Penn State with another loss. If they were loose, but basically, since Indiana's not on the bubble, really, they can't. If they push one down, they're not out. They're essentially a playoff team. Alabama is really the only team that's sort of
It's basically like Clemson or Alabama for that last spot.
And so Indiana's a playoff team, which is obviously kind of a crazy when you think about. What was it, 365 days? Now it's like 365 since Kurt Cignetti was hired. 368. 368. Just that year turnaround, what he's done is remarkable. And in terms of matchups, I ranked just a story about kind of ranking the 6 I think feasible matchups in terms of excitement. I think Georgia's right up there at the top. I think Notre Dame is up there, and then I thought rare matchup against Texas would be kind of interesting, and Penn State. Those are my sort of 4. I think Georgia, to me, would be the most exciting of the bunch. Tennessee's at the bottom. And then Ohio State, I guess, would be possible.
I think Tennessee might have the capacity to be the best game and the best chess match because that's 2 really high-powered offenses.
What about Tex against Texas with Sark, Tino and Cignetti?
I'm not completely sure. I'm still not completely sure what Texas is. No,
I know, but they've only played the program's history.
Sure. When I'm thinking about Indiana and the teams that might play, I look at Indiana, Tennessee, and I find it hard to believe that's not just a lot of points. And I think that would be a lot of fun. But I think it would be an interesting chess match because Tennessee needs to run the ball to have success. Indiana's got the number 1 run defense in the country. You got a freshman quarterback on one side. You got basically a quarterback as old as almost any in the country on the other side.
That's like the X's and O's. To me, the excitement is generated more from the historic nature of the going to Sanford Stadium, Georgia, places you've never played before. Those are the kinds of things that drive the excitement level for me. Whereas like whether the game is good or not, I don't really get to that. I feel like the storylines and sort of the Big Ten versus SEC of it all.
Well,
Tom Allen.
I mean, in that case,
Indiana,
I think Tom
Notre
Allen
Dame.
Indiana,
Notre Dame and
Tom Allen against Indiana in the playoff in the first year after he left, after he's fired.
Would be what?
I mean, that's pretty. And then Notre Dame, Indiana, like that's an obvious one. But that would be another one where I think there would be an interesting intersection of storylines and
game itself,
and like how good Notre Dame is defensively. How does Indiana handle a mobile quarterback? How many offenses has Notre Dame seen that are as good as Indiana? Because it didn't look great necessarily. I mean, they win the game and they win it relatively comfortably in the end, but like they gave up some yards and points to USC. And I know there's been all this like, can SEC schools handle the cold weather? Could Big Ten schools handle an SEC environment? Like there would also just, I think, be something kind of fun to see two Midwest schools that obviously have spent a lot of time adjacent to one another, but really don't play much. Play each other in a playoff game. So we're going to talk a lot more about the playoff and obviously.
So you got give me an answer. What would you consider the most exciting of those 6 matchups? Because I think those are the 6 teams that they can play. I don't think they're.
I think
they're not going to play us.
I would go Notre Dame 1, Penn State 2, Tennessee 3, Georgia 4, Texas 5. Who's the 6th one?
Ohio State.
Ohio State. Yes, yeah. I just don't.
You've mentioned.
Yeah, I just don't have any interest in seeing a game that I saw a month ago again.
I'm surprised Georgia's still on the list. I am.
What happened? Third, fourth.
Yeah.
I do like a Mama's Boy biscuit.
That's what I thought that might factor in for you.
Some Creature Comforts beer.
So, what's the restaurant in Atlanta? What's your go-to restaurant in Atlanta?
Well, for me, I mean, it's obviously getting to Fox Brothers Barbecue is really important. Tucker Brewing, Scofflaw Brewing, the nearest Publix. Naturally.
Okay.
For you, because you're a bit of a foodie, I would send you to Bones, but it's tough for you because you'd wear sandals and they wouldn't let you in. And then I'd send you to Chops.
What's the? We could.
We'll do this.
I'll look that up.
We'll do this. We'll do that later.
We'll have a whole show about restaurant recommendations if I head to Georgia.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds good.
Mama's Boy Biscuits. That's where it's starting.
Is that like a mom and pop shop, or is that?
It's a breakfast place in Athens.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have put to bed 1 or 2 heavy evenings in Mama's Boy in my life. It may have happened.
Is it also a bar?
There's no.
Or you're just eating biscuits all day?
Yeah, very much. If you have to do it, you have to do it.
That expense report.
It's a fun
13
time.
biscuits.
It's a fun time. If you think I won't expense Mama's Boy biscuits, I will expense Mama's Boy biscuits. He's Mike Nislak. I'm Zach Osterman, Indiana 97. Sam Houston State, 71. Hoosiers are 6-2. Miami of Ohio here at home. Friday night, we won't have a show Friday night because I won't be here. He will. So I guess you can do it on your own. But, yeah, for now, for the Herald Times, the Indianapolis Star, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. Talk to you soon.